Talrik stood silently, gazing out the observation window, where Gaia shimmered like a blue gem against the vast darkness of space. He knew this arrogance could be their fatal weakness. Throughout the history of the Galactic Alliance, the greatest mistakes had always stemmed from underestimating those they considered weaker. And this time, Talrik had a nagging feeling that something was off. "We'll begin by taking the old military base," Lyra spoke up, pointing at a map showing a location in the midst of a barren desert. "Biological sensors show no signs of life within a 50-mile radius. This will be a safe landing point to start the operation." "We need to be cautious," Talrik reiterated, his infrared eyes scanning the map. "This planet isn't entirely harmless. Data from the observation post indicates that humanity once conducted dangerous military experiments. Some devices or biological weapons could still be operational." Grak laughed mockingly. "Humans. Their biology isn't even strong enough to harm a garland ant. Don't let your imagination scare you, Talrik." Despite this, Talrik said nothing. He returned his attention to the data, his eyes still sharp with caution. At the military base, a squad of Garland scouts led the way. These tall, armored creatures with shimmering chitinous exoskeletons made the ground tremble with each step. Behind them followed a team of Calvary engineers, carrying devices for biological, chemical, and environmental analysis. The Enhiran warriors, clad in sophisticated mechanical armor, brought up the rear, their eyes scanning every dark corner of the area. The military base, rusted and filled with dust, came into view. Collapsing concrete walls, crumbling watchtowers, and armored vehicles scattered in the harsh sunlight, everything screamed desolation. "It's a dead world," Lyra commented, smirking. Grak, unconcerned with being cautious, moved deeper into the base, growling, "If this is all they've got, this mission won't even be worth recording in the war logs." Talrik kept his distance, his eyes scanning every nook and cranny. His Enhiran armor's sensors emitted a faint beep. "Something's wrong," he said, stopping. "The temperature in this area is abnormal. There's a deep cold zone beneath the surface." Lyra checked her equipment. "I don't see anything but rock and sand." "Then why are there signs of recent movement here?" Talrik responded, pointing to a faint trail in the sand leading to a large, rusted iron door hidden behind debris. Grak burst into laughter. "Maybe their rats have been hiding down there." Unbeknownst to them, from afar, in the shadow of the mountain range, a pair of sharp eyes was tracking their every move. Beneath the surface, in a small room lit by the soft blue glow of screens, Captain Aiden Cross stood silently, watching the images from the surveillance cameras. His military uniform was faded, with signs of past battles on the shoulders. His face bore the weight of fatigue, yet his eyes remained sharp and determined. "The Galactic Alliance," he muttered, tightening his grip on a pendant in the shape of a shield, the symbol of the Gaia resistance. "They've come." Beside him, a team of human engineers and resistance fighters were busy checking old weapons systems. A large screen displayed a 3D model of the base, with small dots indicating the positions of the alien forces. "Do we have a chance, sir?" a young engineer asked anxiously. Aiden turned, his gaze cold. "This isn't the first time we've fought against beings who think they're gods." He leaned over the control panel, pointing to a tunnel leading straight to the center of the base. "We'll draw them in here." Above ground, the Galactic Army pressed deeper into the base. As Grak approached the iron door, he motioned for another Garland warrior to destroy it. A powerful punch from his steel claws sent the door flying open. But as they stepped inside, a strange silence enveloped them. "What's this?" Lyra whispered, glancing around at the strange machines in the room. Nothing but scrap, Grak sneered. Talrik said nothing. He looked up at the ceiling, where his sensors detected a large amount of heat energy building up. Withdraw immediately. Talrik shouted. But it was too late. A massive explosion tore through the air, shaking the entire base. Alien warriors were hurled away like puppets with their strings cut. From the shadows, secret doors swung open, revealing human war machines equipped with plasma guns and energy shields, technology that the Galactic Alliance had never expected from a backward planet. Aiden stepped out of the shadows, an energy rifle in hand. "Welcome to Gaia," he said coldly, his gaze resolute. "This planet is not as easy to subdue as you think." And the battle began, a brutal clash between advanced technology and the survival will of a civilization long underestimated. The Galactic Alliance reconnaissance ship, Vanguard, silently touched down on the surface, sending up a cloud of dust that obscured the blue sky. They landed at an old military base, once the center of humanity's strategic research, now nothing more than a wasteland. Underground bunkers and collapsed structures lay still in the desert, silent witnesses to a bygone era. Grak, a massive Garland warrior with a chitinous exoskeleton reflecting the sunlight, moved toward an old abandoned truck. With a swipe of his claws, he tore the hood off, crumpling it like paper. "This is what they call technology," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Not worth our time." Lyra, a Calvary engineer with a translucent body like crystal, walked slowly through the rubble. She picked up an old rifle, its metal body rusted and cracked. "This must be centuries old," she remarked, turning the rifle over in her hands. "Obsolete, yet oddly nostalgic." In the distance, Commander Talrik did not engage in the conversation. His infrared eyes scanned the entire area, taking note of every minute detail. An unusual silence blanketed the place, no sounds of insects, animals, or even wind rustling through the dunes. It made Talrik uneasy. "Something's wrong," he said in a low, firm voice. "Stay alert. This is not just an abandoned base." But his team paid little attention. They were used to overwhelming weaker civilizations and did not believe this backward planet could pose any threat. Grak laughed loudly. "You're always so tense, Talrik. Relax. This whole planet is nothing but dust." As the galactic troops ventured deeper into the base, they began noticing unusual signs. The crumbling concrete walls were covered in strange symbols, crude yet orderly drawings. Some of the symbols appeared to be warnings, but the language was not one the Alliance had ever encountered. Lyra stopped in front of a large symbol on the main wall, a triangle with an eye at its center. "This looks like a religious symbol," she said, tilting her head as she analyzed it. "Perhaps the locals used it for prayers before they left." Talrik approached, his eyes locked on the strange symbol. "No, this isn't religion. It's camouflage. Something is hidden here." Grak chuckled. "Don't make everything so serious. If there's something dangerous here, we'd have sensed it by now." As soon as he finished speaking, a small but sharp sound echoed from deep within the base, an audible click as if something had just been activated. Talrik immediately raised his hand to signal for them to stop. "My sensors detect thermal energy below the surface. It could be a trap." "A trap? For what?" Lyra responded, though her gaze began to turn cautious. Grak didn't wait. With his brutish instincts, he moved toward the source of the sound, kicking debris aside. Beneath the rubble lay a large metal door, half buried. The door's surface was covered with strange characters and thick layers of dust. "Let me open it," Grak said, driving his sharp claws into the door. Underground, in a dimly lit room, the human resistance team watched every move of the enemy through hidden surveillance cameras. Captain Aiden Cross, leader of the resistance, stood before the main screen, his eyes filled with determination. "They're closer than we expected," Aiden said, his voice gravelly but authoritative. He looked at the screen where Grak was attempting to open the door leading to the center of the base. "They're not backing down." Beside Aiden, Dr. Myra Sandoval, a leading scientist from Earth, watched a transmission device. "The trap system is still operational, but not enough to stop them. We need to activate the second layer of defense. The second layer could expose our position," a young engineer spoke up, concern in his voice. "If it fails, there's no retreat." Aiden turned, his gaze cold. "If we don't do it, we won't have a chance." "Activate it?" Grak finally managed to break through the door. He roared triumphantly, pulling the door aside to reveal a dark tunnel leading deep underground. A chill breeze rose, carrying the scent of metal and something like burning ozone. "Where does this tunnel lead?" Lyra asked, feeling that something wasn't quite right. "Only one way to find out," Grak replied, stepping in without hesitation. The other Garland warriors quickly followed, their eyes lighting up the darkness. Talrik remained at the entrance, the feeling of unease growing stronger. "We shouldn't be doing this," he warned. "This base is more than it seems." "You're always thinking too much," Grak laughed. "If they really have something to fight back with, why haven't we seen anyone yet?" Just as he spoke, another distinct click echoed. This time, the sound was louder, reverberating through the tunnel. Before Grak could react, automated machines sprang from both sides of the walls, firing plasma guns at lethal speed. The Garland warriors at the front were instantly gunned down. The remaining warriors quickly took cover behind debris, trying to retaliate. Lyra and the Calvary engineers scrambled to disable the trap systems, but the rapid gunfire made all their efforts futile. Talrik dragged Lyra behind a concrete wall, shouting, "I told you. It's a trap." "What do we do now?" she screamed, her breath coming in short gasps. Talrik didn't respond immediately. He looked up the tunnel where the faint glow of monitors illuminated the depths. A plan began to form in his mind, but it would require sacrifice. "Lyra, pull back with the engineering team. I'll draw their fire." "But," Lyra began to protest, but Talrik's resolute gaze silenced her. "Be careful." Talrik nodded, ready to plunge into the darkness. At that moment, he understood that the battle with humanity wasn't just a clash of technology, it was a test of intellect and resilience. The sound of gunfire echoed through the air, spreading across the desolate desert landscape. The once proud Galactic Alliance army was now in chaos. Talrik raised his hand, signaling for silence, his infrared eyes scanning the rocks, the shifting sands, searching for any sign of the enemy. But there was nothing. Everything remained still, except for the faint whisper of wind sweeping through the ruined remains. Lyra, concealed by her Calvary camouflaged armor, moved slowly toward Grak, who lay motionless on the ground. She knelt beside him, inspecting his body, and one discovery made her shudder: the bullet had pierced through Grak's chitin, a material once considered impervious to conventional weaponry. "This bullet isn't from Earth," she whispered into her comms, her voice tinged with fear. Talrik crouched low behind a large rock. He spoke in a deep, steady voice, "No, but the method of use definitely belongs to humans. Whoever this is, they know our weaknesses." Over 300 meters away, a sniper adjusted his position on a cliffside. The Galactic Alliance forces were the perfect targets, beings who believed that their superior technology and bodies were immune to anything humanity could produce. But the sniper, a human named Aiden Cross, had studied each species, every type of armor, and the Alliance's tactics before this battle even began. Aiden lay flat on the ground, his camouflage gear blending him perfectly with the surroundings. He breathed slowly and deeply, each breath carefully measured to avoid disturbing the dust around him. His scope displayed the image of Talrik directing his soldiers as they tried to withdraw. "Good leadership," Aiden muttered, his voice nearly indistinguishable from the wind. But even so, he knew no commander is invincible. In his hands, he held a specially designed sniper rifle, using alloy bullets made from meteorite metal stronger than Garland's chitin and fast enough to pierce Calvary's plasma armor. It was the result of a small group of human engineers and scientists who believed that fighting smart would always triumph over sheer power. "Next round," Aiden whispered, his eyes locked onto Lyra, who moved cautiously but still left small gaps between her camouflage and the environment. At the base of the cliff, Lyra could feel the enemy's gaze on her. She knew her camouflage wasn't perfect. The sniper had some way of seeing through every trick. "He's aiming at me," Lyra said into her comms, her voice tense. "Fall back immediately," Talrik ordered, but Lyra didn't respond. She knew that one wrong step, and her life would end. Just then, Talrik made a bold decision. He picked up a piece of the old truck nearby and threw it high into the air, creating a cloud of dust. "Run," he shouted, activating his personal energy shield and rushing out of cover to draw the sniper's attention. On the cliffside, Aiden watched through the dust cloud as Talrik charged straight toward him. A suicide run, he thought to himself, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. But no, this wasn't an impulsive move. Talrik moved in a zigzag pattern, using the debris as temporary shields, forcing Aiden to constantly adjust his angle. Aiden felt the pressure mounting. The enemy was no ordinary foe. Talrik was deliberately testing his reflexes and calculations. Smart, Aiden thought, but the confidence in his eyes never wavered. When Talrik was only about 50 meters from the cliff, Aiden squeezed the trigger. The bullet shot out at incredible speed, whistling through the air. Talrik, thanks to the sensor systems integrated into his armor, rolled to the side just in time. The bullet buried itself in the ground, creating a small crater. At the base of the cliff, Lyra seized the opportunity to retreat, but she didn't pull back alone. In her hand, she carried a small device that she attached to the rock wall. "I'm setting the shock mines," she reported into her comms. "Draw him into range." Talrik nodded, knowing that this meant facing the enemy directly. He powered his energy shield to maximum and continued moving, but now not just to evade. He was pushing the sniper to a position where he could be attacked. On the cliffside, Aiden sensed something was off. A strange feeling brushed past him, as though everything wasn't going according to plan. He decided to reposition, but as he moved, a small click came from the sensor device he had placed nearby. "Shock mines," he muttered, and immediately darted left to avoid the blast. The shock mines exploded, sending a powerful shock wave rippling across the area. Aiden quickly rolled into a small rock alcove to avoid serious injury, but the blast temporarily disabled his camouflage system. Talrik saw the opening, immediately switching to combat mode and charging toward the cliff. Aiden quickly regained his footing, turning to aim, but Talrik was already nearly on top of him. With the speed and strength of an Enheran, Talrik landed a powerful kick to Aiden's rifle, sending it flying. The two enemies now faced each other at less than 5 meters. "You're not like other humans," Talrik said, his voice cold but with a hint of respect. "And you're not like any alien I've met," Aiden replied, his gaze fearless. The hand-to-hand battle between these two exceptional foes began, each knowing that the outcome of this clash could determine the fate of their entire teams. The atmosphere on the battlefield had become incredibly tense. From his position, hiding behind a large rock, Talrik observed the enemy's every move through the integrated sensors in his Enheran armor. Each time a teammate was gunned down or fell into a trap, anger surged within him, but his mind remained sharp. This was not the time for reckless actions. "Everyone, stop!" Talrik shouted into the comms, his deep voice cutting through the frantic and chaotic cries. "Don't move. He's leading us into a bigger trap." His team immediately halted. A few surviving soldiers gathered near a safer position, their eyes full of fear and confusion. Talrik scanned his team Lyra, whose face was dotted with sweat, but whose sharp eyes were still scanning the surroundings, Bale, a Calvary engineer, quickly repairing his sensor system, and the two remaining Garland warriors, strong but not able to hide their exhaustion. "This guy's not just a sniper," Lyra said, her breath quick. "He's a strategist. He's not killing us right away, he's making us trap ourselves and fall into disarray." Talrik nodded, a glimmer of realization lighting up his eyes as a plan began to form. "If he's leading us around on his terms, then we'll flip the board." On the cliffside, Aiden Cross was watching intently through his scope. He noticed the change in the alien army's formation. They were no longer moving recklessly. Talrik, the one Aiden had recognized as the commander, was beginning to reorganize his forces. "Smarter than I thought," Aiden muttered. Aiden was no stranger to warfare. He had been a special forces operative, trained to fight in the harshest of environments. But this battle was different. His enemies were warriors equipped with technology far superior to anything humans had, with strength and speed to match. To level the playing field, he had to exploit every small advantage, the environment, tactics, and even psychology. "All right, Talrik," Aiden whispered, a faint smile curling at the edges of his lips. "Let's see what you do next." Talrik quickly divided his team into two smaller groups, ordering Lyra to lead one team to the left, while he and Bale moved toward the center, the assumed sniper's position. But instead of heading straight for it, Talrik used a signal jammer to disrupt Aiden's sensors. Meanwhile, Bale deployed a series of small drones, sending out fake signals to mislead the enemy. "This time, he'll have to reveal himself," Talrik spoke into his comms. "Lyra, if you spot him moving, report immediately." Lyra, carefully moving through the ruins, felt her heart rate quicken. The air around her seemed to thicken, each step calculated to avoid any traps. She knew that one wrong move, and everything would be over. Aiden noticed the unusual signals when a cluster of small drones appeared on his sensor screen. They didn't have weapons, but they emitted heat and electromagnetic signals identical to living creatures. A smile played on his lips. "Trying to distract me, huh?" he muttered, beginning to analyze the movement of the signals. But just as he was about to target a fake figure, a small beep sounded from his close-range warning device. Aiden turned to see Lyra closing in from the left. She had found his position. Lyra didn't hesitate. She immediately activated her energy weapon, firing a plasma beam toward Aiden. But the sniper reacted quicker than she anticipated. He rolled to the side, drew a small pistol, and shot back. Lyra narrowly avoided the shot, but she knew she had lost the element of surprise. Aiden didn't run. Instead, he quickly adapted to the terrain, dashing between rocks and switching to close quarters combat. He understood that sniping was no longer an option with the enemy so close. Meanwhile, Talrik and Bale were also approaching Aiden's position from another direction. They heard the gunshots and explosions from Lyra's side, understanding that she was engaged in combat. "Hurry up!" Talrik ordered. When Talrik arrived, he saw Aiden in a tense struggle with Lyra. Lyra's strikes were powerful and precise, but Aiden was nimble and agile, using the terrain to avoid and counterattack. Without hesitation, Talrik joined in, helping Lyra corner Aiden. But Aiden wasn't one to be easily subdued. He tossed a smoke grenade, obscuring the entire area, then used the chaos to retreat. Despite his quick reflexes, Talrik couldn't stop him in time. As the smoke cleared, Aiden was gone. Only Talrik, Lyra, and Bale remained, standing in silence. Talrik looked around, feeling a mix of disappointment and respect. "He's not your average enemy," he said. "He's a warrior worthy of respect." "But we haven't lost yet," Lyra replied, her voice firm. "He's shown his weakness, he doesn't want to kill us right away. He has another objective." Talrik nodded, his gaze cold but determined. He knew this battle wasn't over, and the sniper Aiden Cross would be back. But next time, Talrik wouldn't let him slip away so easily. The narrow canyon was shrouded in a deadly silence, broken only by the howling wind through the rocks and occasional dust clouds floating in the air. Talrik, the battle-hardened commander, leaned against a large stone, his energy shield flickering weakly after absorbing numerous blows. His inherent armor, once his pride, was now scorched and cracked, revealing the metallic skin underneath. He panted heavily, his gaze determined but betraying a hint of exhaustion. Across from him, Aiden Cross, the legendary human sniper, slowly emerged from the shadows. His cold eyes, his grip firmly on the rifle that had become an extension of himself, seemed to cut through the last remnants of pride in Talrik. The alien commander was now standing before an opponent he could not underestimate, someone who relied not on advanced technology, but on intellect, willpower, and experience. "You're not like the other warriors of your kind," Talrik said, his voice rough. "You fight not for glory or honor. You fight for something greater." Aiden didn't answer immediately. He aimed his rifle at Talrik, his finger hovering over the trigger but not pulling it. "For survival," he replied, his voice cold and unwavering. "That's something you arrogant aliens will never understand." Talrik struggled to stand tall despite his weary body. He stared at Aiden, trying to find a weakness in the human's cold exterior. He knew time was running out, but he also understood that this wasn't just a battle of strength. This was a duel of wills, the will of a proud Enheran warrior against the will of a human who refused to yield. "Do you know why we came here?" Talrik asked, trying to buy time. "Not just to conquer. We seek worthy opponents, those who can challenge us. But you're something we didn't expect." "What you didn't expect," Aiden replied, "is that humanity never bows its head. You think you're superior, but that arrogance is your fatal weakness." As soon as the words left his mouth, Aiden activated a remote device on his arm. From behind, a series of small plasma mines detonated, shaking the entire canyon. Talrik was caught off guard, his Enheran armor unable to withstand the barrage of explosions. He was sent flying, crashing hard against the rock face. With what little strength he had left, Talrik forced himself to rise, drawing a glowing energy sword. "If this is how you want it to end, then let's duel," he said, his eyes blazing with his last resolve. Aiden lowered his rifle and gave a faint smile. He drew a small military knife, the blade gleaming under the harsh sunlight. Very well. Let me show you what you've never understood about humanity: resilience. The two charged at each other like wild beasts. Talrik, with his superior strength, swung the energy sword with tremendous force. Aiden dodged nimbly, each step calculated, every strike aimed at Talrik's weaknesses. Though Talrik's strength and speed were overwhelming, Aiden remained calm. He knew he couldn't win in a battle of pure strength, but he had his mind and tactics. The fight dragged on, every stab, every slash carrying immense weight. Talrik began to lose his patience. He put all his strength into a powerful slash, hoping to end the battle immediately. But Aiden, with his seasoned experience, anticipated the move. He spun aside, then charged straight at Talrik, driving the blade of his knife deep into the weakest part of Talrik's armor, at his neck. Talrik froze, his eyes wide in shock. He staggered back, his hand reaching for his neck as blue blood began to spill out. You're not as simple as we thought," he whispered, his voice weak. The arrogance was gone from his gaze, replaced with respect for the one who had bested him. Aiden stepped back, watching as Talrik collapsed. He said nothing, silently observing his opponent's final breath. For Aiden, this victory wasn't something to be proud of, it was just a part of the much longer war to protect humanity. Aiden turned away and left the canyon. The sky was still and silent, but he knew the alien forces wouldn't stop. However, he also knew that today's lesson would be etched deeply into their minds. Humanity was not weak, and their survival depended not only on technology but on an unshakable resilience and intellect. On Dominance, the flagship of the Galactic Alliance, a heavy atmosphere hung over the command deck. The officers who had survived the battle on Gaia returned, their faces grim, showing signs of deep disappointment. The footage from the final drones before they were destroyed was replayed on the large screen, capturing the elite warriors of their forces falling one by one to attacks they had once scorned. High Commander Orvan, a seasoned Enheran with gold-plated armor, stood still before the screen. He silently watched the scene unfold, his eyes glowing like two red jewels in the dark. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice low and sharp like cold steel. A cavalry engineer hesitantly answered, "Not an army. A single individual, sir. Just one person." Those words struck deep into the pride of the entire fleet. One human had done what an entire elite fleet couldn't have anticipated. Elsewhere on Gaia, deep within the ruins of an old military base, Aiden Cross sat by the riverbank, washing the blood from his hands. The water's surface reflected his face, no longer youthful, marked by scars both physical and mental. He felt neither joy nor satisfaction. Every battle left invisible scars, and this one was no exception. Aiden looked up at the star-filled sky, where the massive ships of the invaders still hovered like ghosts in the night. He knew that, even though they had won a victory, this was only the beginning. The aliens would not easily abandon their mission. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind him. A small group of human warriors appeared, armed with primitive weapons but their eyes full of determination. The leader, a tough woman, stepped forward. "Are you Aiden Cross?" she asked, her voice rough yet strong. Aiden nodded, saying nothing. "We've heard about you. You've done things we never dared to dream of." She paused, her gaze flashing with admiration. "But we can't let you fight alone. Gaia is home to all of us." On Dominance, Orvan called an emergency meeting with senior officers. The images from the battle played repeatedly, with Aiden Cross appearing like a ghost, moving silently but wreaking destruction. Orvan realized that humans were not mere primitive creatures. They were dangerous enemies because they knew how to turn scarcity into an advantage. We can no longer underestimate humanity, Orven said, his eyes glowing with wariness. They don't have advanced technology, but they have something we've lost long ago: adaptability and an unyielding spirit. We need to change our strategy. A Garland officer growled, still holding onto his inherent arrogance. Change the strategy? We are the rulers of the galaxy. We don't need to lower ourselves before a weak species like that. Orven spun around, his eyes sharp as a blade, piercing the officer. It was that arrogance that led to our defeat. If you still think that way, go down there and face the ghost of the battlefield. See if you can survive. The room fell silent. Orven knew this wasn't just a battle, it was a harsh lesson for the entire Galactic Alliance. On Gaia, Aiden began to rally the remaining warriors. They weren't just soldiers, they were farmers, miners, and even children who had grown up in the midst of war. Ordinary people, each carrying within them a flame that wouldn't be easily extinguished. Aiden taught them how to fight in the dark, how to turn their environment into a weapon, and how to think like predators. We don't have warships, Aiden said during one training session. No energy weapons or modern technology. But we have intellect and will. And that's something our enemies don't have. Harsh training exercises began. Each member of the team learned how to camouflage, set traps, and use the resources around them. They didn't just become warriors, they became dangerous predators, ready to repel any invader. Meanwhile, news of the ghosts of the battlefield spread across the galaxy. Other species, once fearful of the Galactic Alliance's power, began to look at Gaia as a symbol of resistance. A small planet, with its creatures once deemed insignificant, had done the unthinkable, standing firm against an overwhelming enemy. The Galactic Alliance now faced not just a battle, but a greater threat. They realized that if they couldn't eliminate humanity, they might lose their dominance over the galaxy. Talrik, though fallen on the battlefield, left behind an unforgettable lesson. Aiden Cross had not only won the battle, but also made the aliens realize that humanity was not simply a small species on a backward planet. They were a symbol of resilience, intellect, and an unbreakable will. And from here on, the war on Gaia was not just about humanity's survival, but a warning to the entire galaxy: never underestimate those you don't understand.